Which also, by the way, like high school, I don't know how we functioned at 7:30 in the morning. That's ridiculous. But that's aside the fact. When I was 16, my mom had a brain aneurysm. Mm-hmm. It happened after my high school lacrosse game. We went to double OT, and I came back from the game in the parking lot, and her car was pulled over to the side. There was like a huge commotion, a crowd running over to the corner of the parking lot. And my mom had a brain aneurysm in her brain stem. Jeez. So basically, for those that don't know, brain aneurysm is when your blood vessel just pops.
Okay, whenever you started, we're good. Professor Norman,
how's it more?
It's good to have you on my interview channel.
Thanks for the invitation.
Why in the art industry? Like, why do you think, like, at least in your perspective, right, that you learn from being an umpire? And if you can give us like a story or an example, that would be fantastic. Unfortunate, but today we're gonna have the adjunct professor at Clark University and the co-founder of Munq, right?
Got it.
Cool, perfect. All right. Do you mind if you just introduce yourself for a second right here?
Yeah, absolutely. What's up, viewers? My name is Tim Hally, also known more well on campus as Professor Hally. And yeah, I'm an adjunct professor here, Clark alumni. Graduated in 2019 undergrad, 2020 got my fifth year MBA. And I'm the co-founder of Munq, a creative agency right here in Central Mass.
Perfect. That's amazing. All right, so let's start our interview if that's fine, you know?
You can interview me.
Perfect. All right, let's do it. So could you provide us like with an overview of like what is Munq, you know, like the Munq company?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I say the words creative agency, in a very simple term, it is marketing and branding. Mm-hmm. Specifically, we kind of lean heavily on the brand side. But our kind of tagline that we've come up with is we build brand stories that connect. And essentially, we are a long-term creative partner for organizations, mid-market companies, growing companies. And essentially what we do is help to tell their story, to connect with who they need to connect with, to advance their organizational objectives. Inevitably, that comes down to things like brand awareness, brand positioning, mm-hmm. sales, more importantly. But we execute our stories in a number of ways. Mm-hmm. The first and foremost being video production. Do a lot of design work, so brand identities, visual identities. We design documents, proposals, annual reports. And then last, we kind of do a lot of strategy, consulting, brand strategy. So all in all, we're just helping our clients work through really high-level branding and marketing challenges. We ask the question, where are you today? Kind of what are the challenges ahead? Where do you want to be in the future? How can we devise a custom creative program mm-hmm. to address those challenges? And then myself and Justin, the co-founder, we execute on that. We do a lot of the work, but we also hire a ton of contractors and freelancers to kind of help us out. And, you know, we're almost 3 years in business, and the growth, especially this year, has just been absolutely just, I can't put words to it. Just,
exponentially getting better.
Yes, we get better with every single project we do, every single experience. And that's why I love teaching at Clark. I just love giving back to students like yourself.
Community.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Nice. So I can tell that you actually you love your job and you love what you do. That's the craziest thing. Like you have like a huge passion on like this thing, you know?
Yeah, it's like I wake up every single day. We always have work to do, mm-hmm. but I never feel like I'm doing work. It's when you're an entrepreneur, you wake up every single day and you're like, all right, what are the challenges of today? What can I reasonably get accomplished? And how can I ever so slightly just move the needle, even incrementally? If you just make small progressions, small steps every single day, that compounds into momentum mm-hmm. that you wouldn't even like believe. But it's just the incremental, the micro, doing the small, consistent things every single day. And that's what I do.
Totally. I mean, I can see the results, on every single perspective. Before we start the next question, let me just raise up my chair a little bit. Then I can.
I had to lower my chair.
Actually, yeah. I just want to be in the same height as you.
Of course.
In the camera and thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Little segue right here, but it's fine. So, what inspired you to start a journey of creating the company Munq?
Yeah. So that, my backstory and inversely the backstory of Munq is a journey that kind of takes me back to childhood, right? When I was a kid, I always loved telling stories. I was always very inquisitive, maybe not necessarily at times in an academic sense. Like, I had subjects that interested me, but I was always curious, right? And I always envisioned something bigger. My life for me personally changed when I was 16. So when I was 16, my mom had a brain aneurysm. It happened after my high school lacrosse game. We went to double OT, and I came back from the game in the parking lot, and her car was pulled over the side. There was like a huge commotion, a crowd running over to the corner of the parking lot. And my mom had a brain aneurysm in her brain stem. Jeez. So basically, for those that don't know, brain aneurysm is when your blood vessel just pops. So basically, within those 3 days, she should have been dead, and she's still alive to this day. And still, we were able to bring her home. But basically, from that point forward, she was very, very severely ill and extremely handicapped. She had a trachea, she had a feeding tube, she had to point to letters on a board to communicate. She was very, very, as they call it, locked in. But my family, over the past decade, has fought for her care, has fought for her to get home to our family property in Shrewsbury, where she has 24/7 nursing care now. But during that time, both from my mom's example of just really fighting for her life, honestly, fighting to have a quality life, fighting to see her kids graduate, get married, have children. And on top of that, my dad's courage and bravery in fighting the insurance companies, doing whatever it took to get her home, being with my mom. She stayed at a rehabilitation facility in Holden, Massachusetts. We would visit her every single day. So for me, when I was in high school, my day looked like wake up, which also, by the way, like, high school, I don't know how we functioned at 7:30 in the morning. That's ridiculous. But that's aside the fact. I would wake up, go to school, then it would either be visit mom, or if I had sports practice, go to sports practice, then visit mom, do homework, repeat. And before I went off to college in 2015, we actually did get her home. So that experience, I share that because, right, we're talking about storytelling.
Yes.
That is so crucial to who I am. Like, it's such a fundamental reason. And that's where kind of the values and the ethos that would become Munq started, because it was in the halls of those rehab facilities. It was in the corridors of a hospital that I learned about this thing called empathy, that you look around, and as bad as you think you have it, there's always someone who has it worse and someone who has it better. I saw, and my family saw, patients with MLS, my apologies, ALS, traumatic brain injuries, people that were completely paralyzed, like locked in. And it just kind of opened my eyes at a very young age. I had to grow up, and I just realized a lot of truths about the world. But as much as I saw the bad, and sometimes the bad in people, the one thing I did see was the good. And I am a firm optimist. I am a believer, and I just know that miracles can happen. There's such thing as miracles, and my mom was one. So that really kind of set the foundation for me, just my values, who I am today. I really owe it to my parents, my family, and everyone that supported me during that time. So basically, where that led to everything else, right? I transferred to Clark in 2017. I went to another local area college. I came here because I needed a new start. Still wanted to play lacrosse, wanted to be close to home.
Totally.
My family's from Shrewsbury, so We're 20 minutes that way. So I wanted to be close to home, wanted to be there for my mom, wanted to play sports, also wanted to get a great education. And that's why I came to Clark. And so from that point forward, I took a class. My very first class I took here was Entrepreneurship 115 with Professor Dobson. And I don't necessarily credit that class to like, oh my God, like doing everything for me per se. But what it did is it planted a seed in my head of this thing called entrepreneurship. I was like, what is it? It's so ambiguous.
Was that the first time you heard the word entrepreneurship?
It wasn't the first time I heard it. It was
defined.
Yes, defined. It was the first time that I felt like there's a definition to this kind of like intangible term. Because like, you know, my generation, like the Zillennials as they call it, because you know, you're very firmly Gen Z, like entrepreneurship is wicked cool for you guys.
Yeah.
Whereas for my generation, it was like, oh, you're gonna like start a business? Like that's kind of weird. But at that time, like entrepreneurship was kind of pushing towards the forefront in pop culture, like the Gary V's of the world, you know, all those kind of figures. So it planted a seed in my head, and it was a bug. I couldn't get rid of it. So from there, it was just like I would hustle. Like my start was just landscaping, mulching yards, cleaning gutters, maybe some power washing here and there. I would do any odd job I could just to honestly pay for my apartment, my bills, things of that nature. And what those experiences taught me was the soft skill that is entrepreneurship. They're obviously, right, there's a lot of different business ventures and things that require a certain kind of high caliber skill. But at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is just self-efficacy. It's soft skills. And most importantly, it's just understanding people and building relationships. So through those formative experiences, I laid yet more of the foundation for what will become my entrepreneurial kind of path. Now we're in this part of the story, we're in 2018, right? My senior year, coming out of the summer, and I don't know how to describe it. It almost sounds crazy, but I had this calling. I literally felt like I was being summoned. I don't know how to describe it. It was just this pull, this gravity that would not let me go. And I was just like, I have to do something. I don't know what that is, but I had this realization that I can make money my whole life. I could go get a stable 9-to-5 career. I could get the insurance, the benefits, whatever you name it. But with my time here, I want to say that I made a difference. And that matters to me, right? Because of everything we talked about with my mom. Like I've seen what it's like to be on the other side of that equation, and I just want to help people. I want to use my natural talents and abilities to help people. So I knew I could do this, but I couldn't do it alone.
Yeah.
I was only half the puzzle here, right? For whatever reason, and again, I don't think there's such things as coincidences. I think everything that's meant to happen will happen. And basically, my old friend, Justin Mattson, my now co-founder, for whatever reason, I was in search of just people, someone that would understand what I'm putting out into the world. And for whatever reason, I saw him on Instagram. He was posting these designs he was making, these websites, these blogs he was writing. I was just so intrigued by it. So I was like, I think we should meet up. Then I proceeded to see him at the bowling alley at 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
My friend saw him downtown. I kept running into him. So the signs to me became obvious.
That means something, definitely, you know?
It means something. So I was like, all right, come over. So he came over. I needed a logo because at this time, also, one of the new ventures I was doing, I just started learning how to do video production. It was my last senior season of lacrosse. I forgot to mention that. No, I mentioned that.
You mentioned it.
Yeah, I was on the lacrosse team.
Yes.
So I wanted to document my last year of lacrosse. So like yourself, with the money I had, which wasn't much at the time, I put down $600 into a Canon G7X Mark II. It was a $600 point shoot camera.
That was a lot. That was a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, inflation adjusted.
Yeah,
like,
that was a lot.
That's like $850.
$6,000 at least now.
Yeah, nowadays it's like that's like $1,000.
Yeah,
that's a wrap.
Yeah.
So basically, I was learning video production at the time. I was making vlogs for the lacrosse team for documenting my final season. It was called Tim Hally's Fourth Quarter. Get it? It's like, you know, the fourth quarter, last quarter of the game, last year of my lacrosse.
Senior year.
It was, you know, branding just came naturally. Just kidding. That That name was kind of cringy. Anyhow, so I'm self-teaching myself video production. I needed a logo. Justin made logos. So I told him, come over my Clark apartment on Beaver Street on the 3rd floor. And basically one night at 3 a.m. in the morning, we made our first logo together. It was this weird moment where we were thinking of ideas. Nothing was sticking. I go back in the common room. My butt barely grazes the couch. And then I spring back up. I'm like, I got it. I go inside this whiteboard. I draw this crude looking thing. And Justin's like, okay, yeah, I can see that. He goes into his program, whips it up. It was there. It was like that feeling of co-creation, that feeling of elation, excitement of what you can do when two people come together to make something is Munq in a bottle today. From that point forward, I was going into the 5th year. I had no internships, no prospects, nothing. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to wait for anyone to validate me. I'm not going to wait for anyone to say, you're good at marketing, here's an internship. I said, I'm going to go out there. Justin and I are going to do a bunch of pro bono work, free work, and we're going to create a portfolio, and one day we'll make a business out of it. From that point forward, up until the pandemic, which, as we know, turned the entire world upside on top of its head, Justin and I freelanced, and basically we got to a point in 2020 where we're like, well, let's put a brand to this. Let's put a name to this. Opened our LLC.
Make it live.
Make it live, launched our LLC, or launched the business itself on December 21st, 2020, on the winter solstice, the darkest day of our darkest year, because we felt by starting our business that day that maybe ever so slightly we could help the light come back. And that was a long-winded answer to how Munq became Munq today.
Wow. The logo is like this one. It was like, what was the one he designed, right? Like
so in my 3rd floor apartment, he designed a logo for my my vlog.
Yeah.
Justin designed this logo.
Yeah.
He came over one day to my house and was like, I got the logo. Like, we were like, it took us a couple months, but he made this logo. Originally it was in a box.
Yeah.
We sat down together, we got rid of the box. This has been our logo for 3 years.
It's clean.
In the process of a trademark right now. So we intend on this logo can stand the test of time. I intend on keeping it as long as we're a business.
I like it. I think it's like easy and straightforward. That's the key. That's the key about like logo, right? Like you want people to remember it, I remembered it, so it's perfect. Ooh, I have to admit, you're a good storyteller.
Thank you.
I have to admit, like, that's why you're a professor in Clark. There must be a reason of what you're really good at it, and that was storytelling.
Yeah.
You're actually good at it. So
Crazy.
myself are not bad at storytelling too. So we're sort of in some similarity right now.
Yeah.
But my next question is going to be so balancing your life between like being a professor and co-founder, right? Let's say, how do you like successfully balancing this like two different lifestyles?
That's a great question. Very good question. At first, it didn't come easy.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. So my first year teaching, fall 2022 through spring 2023, it was a steep curve. From day one, I knew how to give a good presentation, a good lecture. For me, the hard part of teaching wasn't teaching itself. It was the organization of teaching, right? Creating a lesson plan.
Certain slides, certain I see what you mean. Syllabus, that kind of thing.
It was the technical stuff that kind of caught me up, and not because it was hard. It was simple, but not easy, if that makes sense.
I see what you mean, yeah.
So that's what caught me up, and it took me some time. And sometimes the demands of the business would kind of supersede what I had to do for class. My last class this spring, I had to cancel at least 2 classes because of like client fire drills.
Oh yeah.
For example, there was we were doing a really big project for an institution, and we got almost done with the whole project. Like, I was ready to hit export on this final version, and then at like 1:30 in the morning, my hard drive just completely corrupts.
Oh.
We lose everything.
That sucks.
We lose everything.
That sucks.
Luckily, my friend George, who we also hire on a contract basis, luckily he had a backup.
Oh.
of like the footage, but the Premiere file was also on that hard drive. So we had to basically go back in and like hacksaw the first version MP4, hacksaw that into the final video again, and they had like a strict deadline. So that's just an example of sometimes when you're a young business, there's just so many demands, and sometimes there's things that come up where, you know, unfortunately, adjunct professoring has to come second. But I will say, now being my third semester, I got a good system. I'm teaching art of the pitch for the second time now. I'm more organized. I know how to use my TA effectively. And honestly, this is the best semester yet. I'm just so excited to come to class every single week. And I now am just a person who is capable of doing both. And it just took time.
Oh my God. I mean, you're only 27. That's the craziest part, you know, like you're like a professor in a really good college.
Yeah.
Munq is a really good college.
Yeah,
Yeah, but at the same time, you're a co-founder in a super, striving up kind of like company, you know.
Yeah.
So that's hard, you know. And I have to give you that. It's really hard. It's not easy at all.
And I don't give myself credit for that at all. I'm just like, anyone should be able to do this. But it's like, it's been a crazy journey.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about process, right?
Exactly.
So my next question is going to be a little interesting one right here. It would be like the kind of wrapped up of like, you know, everything, you know.
Sure.
So it's a little fun challenge right here.
Okay.
So it's a further evaluation of your ability of storytelling. So it's time to show, you know. So
man,
what's the challenge going to be? For example, I'm applying a job right now. For example, right? Like say like you know, Microsoft, Apple, whatever, right? I'm just saying I'm applying a job right now. My resume is whatever question that you ask me, and I answer your question, right? So based on my answer, you got to tell me like what should I say more about my story? Which part of the answer should I expand in more in order to make me stand out in terms of all these application right here?
Oh man.
So you see what I mean right here? Like you ask me a question, for example, like what's your favorite memory when you were like little?
Sure.
Like, you see what I mean, right? Like
I can
you can envision that, right? Like,
okay.
Cool.
Well, so
let's say like I'm gonna apply a marketer job in Apple. Let's say that. So it's gonna be like mostly working with people in human resources.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll say this for context. I've had like I've had one real job interview in my life. The other one was at a landscaping company, and my boss was like, "Hey, guy, can you weed whack?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, you got the job." I'm like, "Okay."
Oh, that's good.
I was like, "Word." And then I had another interview with for a marketing internship. Never had an internship in my life. It was a marketing internship, and it was for like I would call them not like a competing agency, but a local agency.
Yeah.
And she asked me what copywriting was, and I was like, "Copywriting? I had no idea what that meant." Is that pathetic?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is pathetic.
Yeah.
She was like, "Do you know what copywriting is?" I'm like, "Copywriting?" She's like, "Yeah, like writing with like an objective." I was like, "Oh yeah, now I know." I didn't get the internship.
Back then?
Back then, no.
That was unfortunate.
Probably for a good reason, but anyhow, back on topic. So I'm going to ask you a question. Like, why do you do what you do?
Like, you mean this thing?
Anything.
Why do you do what you do? Wow.
Why?
That's a wide range of questions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Put the pressure on him.
Yeah. I mean, that's nice. I like it. I like the feeling. It's actually like a real interview. I think. So basically, what you said, passions is the key. So I have passions toward what I'm doing right now, which is, let's just say, interviewing people. You are a phenomenal storyteller. At the same time, I would say like I'm really good at like conversing with people. What does that mean? Is like I have passion when I'm like talking with other people and learn things from the conversations. So basically, what does that mean? Is like it's like I can learn things not just by like reading books, reading text, listening podcasts, but actually from conversing with other people. So like for example, I'm saying like talking with like no matter it's like a marketer, a head marketer, or like a CEO of a company, or a professor, or a student, or let's say someone walking up the street if I got a chance. So I can learn different perspective of lifestyle of their own story, right? And that's the key of why I'm doing what I'm doing right now.
I like that. So you're very strong when it comes to interpersonal relationships. You ask good questions. And by the way, if you want to figure out anything, it's all about asking good questions. I tell my class to ask the question why all the time. So you're very strong when it comes to interpersonal relationships. You ask good questions. You're able to kind of parcel together information to kind of create a bigger narrative. Why do you care so much about developing relationships with people? Why not?
Ooh. Like why I'm caring about like talking with other people.
Yeah, why do you care in the first place? Why do you do that?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's because people need experiences, right? Everybody need it. So to me, from a different culture, I'm from Beijing, you know.
Oh yeah.
I was born and raised there, and then I'm studying abroad basically. And the craziest part is like English weren't easy at first. So what I do basically is like talking with other people at the same time, practicing my English in that case, if that makes sense. So that's like a key part of back then was like why I enjoy talking with others so much is because I have to practice my English, and it's better to listen and talk with people. You know, that improves English a lot.
Well, see, right there, when I hear about your story, I mean, you grew up in China.
Yeah.
You have a global perspective. You know, I'm American, right? I grew up in America. I've never traveled outside the country, right? If I were looking at you versus me, I'd be like, you know, Al has not only this global understanding, but just that perspective, I feel like, is a ton of value to a company. And on top of that, you had to learn English, which I can imagine is not an easy language to learn. Is that correct?
Yeah, totally.
I've heard from other cultures and other students that like English is hard. Like it makes no sense, honestly.
Yeah, but it is hard. Yes,
it's hard. So not only do you have this global perspective, but you are able to acclimate yourself into a completely different environment halfway across the world, develop interpersonal relationships with other people through this challenge of learning English. You're very long-term oriented. You basically, through that entire experience, have become this like well-rounded, charismatic, through your global perspective and your ability to, just that example alone is an example of you overcoming adversity. You've demonstrated already a series of skills and intangibles that myself, if I were to hire someone, I would find attractive. I would value that over someone who didn't have to do those things. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So like your global perspective and your ability to overcome challenges and also fit seamlessly into somewhere else halfway across the world speaks a ton to your character. So if I were in an interview, I would drum that up. And two, I mean, the United States and China are massive economic partners. So if you're talking about like a business job or like a business career, and I assume you speak Chinese, right?
Yeah.
You can speak Chinese and English. Like that's when you talk about like just like population numbers. That's like 25% of the world's population right there.
Yeah.
You can communicate with 25% of the world's population. That's huge.
That's a lot.
So just the fact that you are such a global, well-acquainted, talented, versed student that can kind of mingle between these two different cultural hemispheres of, you know, the West versus the East. Me, as a company that does international business, would look at you and I'd be like, we have to hire Al.
I see, yeah.
You can bridge the gap between the two worlds. And not only can you speak the language, but you know the cultural differences. Like, have you kind of come to understand, like, you know, in China there's a certain set of standards and expectations, and in America there's a certain set of standards and expectations. Like, you have the secret sauce, and it's because of just your story.
Wow. Do you think my story can make it like to a really fascinating kind of storytelling thing, you know, in a resume or like in an interview?
I think, yeah, because like when it comes to resumes, I'd be completely honest. Don't come to me for that. Go to the Career Center. The school management has great resources. Like, I'm not the person for resumes, but if you want to talk about how to talk about yourself in an interview, like that story, that big picture, I think I'd be a great resource. And I've actually helped students with interviews, and I've had students be very successful. I've also given I'm 2 for 2 on job recommendations.
Oh, yeah.
So like if someone has to call me, like people put me down for references.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 2 for 2. I've gotten calls from people to like put on like a friend or a colleague, and they got the job. So 2 for 2, you know, not too bad.
Cool. That's nice.
Hope to make it 3 for 3. We'll see.
Yeah, that's a good record right there. But it was so good to talk with you today. Actually,
Yeah.
This is a phenomenal interview. I think the viewers actually learned a lot about the key of storytelling and why, like, it's important to have passions on what you love, right? So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Al. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, we're all set. And check out some more Exploring Time on YouTube, and we're gonna keep making all this phenomenal interview with more guests. Appreciate it.